Welcome to the Future of Payroll and Workforce Management Insights by HR.com, your go-to resource for insights into payroll and workforce management. From navigating compliance and technology trends to exploring the latest in global payroll solutions, we're here to keep you ahead of the curve. Join us as we dive into the forces reshaping payroll and share practical strategies to optimize your workforce management. Let's get started. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the latest episode of Future of Payroll and Workforce Management, a podcast here at HR.com, where I am Executive Community Leader of Future of Payroll, and I do several other things, so many things that sometimes I forget what I'm doing. But in any event, this isn't about me today. This is about my guest, Dave Momic. Hi, Dave.
Hey, Brent, how you doing?
Oh, I'm doing great. And thank you very much for joining the podcast today. We have a really, really interesting topic to discuss. It's around global payroll transformation, careers in it, and what it all means. Now, you are a longtime global payroll professional. You do a lot of work in workforce management as well. And I would say that you're an expert in this field. And what I like to ask all of my guests at the outset of these episodes is, what gets you motivated every day when it comes to the world of work? Everyone has a passion in this space, I've found. I'm curious what yours is.
Yeah, it's funny you asked that because I've been and thanks for having me. I've been so excited, like leading up to this. I know we've been waiting to record this one, so super excited. And honestly, it's funny because so many things motivate me in this space, and I think everyone kind of falls into global payroll. Like you ask anyone why they're here, how they got here, everyone has a unique, interesting, fun story about how they fall into it. And most of everyone that I talk to in this space is so passionate, and it's for so many different reasons. For me particularly, um, it's focused around the people. Honestly, it's all about the people and what we do. And I like to tell my team and everyone that I encounter. I think for me, it's one of the messages I share is we have the privilege, right? We have the privilege to be able to provide the support for tens or hundreds of thousands of families across the world, right? So when I look at myself and my role in my organization, I prophesize that to my team quite a bit when we're you know facing a tough time or we're facing a challenge or we're doing just our day-to-day motions, right? You're in the thick of processing week and you're going through all your checks and balances. It's like, why are we doing this, right? What's the reason? What are we doing? And you have to think about, how it impacts every person that you're supporting, right? And for me, that's what really drives me, what really motivates me, what really keeps me going in the fun times and the tough times. It's why are we doing this? And I love to tell that to my team. I think about the people that you're impacting all across the world, right? This isn't just, hey, we gotta get a paycheck out, or hey, this is about a pay slip or checking a box. Like we are literally providing the opportunity for people all over the world to be able to pay their bills, put food on the table, support their families. And to me, that's a privilege. It's an honor. It's something that we kind of hold sacred in our world. And it truly motivates me. And then it's all about the people that we work together to make all of this happen, right? So it's all focused on the people.
Yeah, that's the thing about payroll. It is, I'm going to put a flag in the ground here and just say it's the most important part of the business. I really do believe it is. And and it's so difficult to get sort of, or excuse me, it's so easy to get really fixated on all the details
Yeah.
when it comes to making payroll happen because there are so many. But it's really important to remember just how big it is and just, dare I say, existential, right? I mean, people,
And you think about it, no one's working for free, right? Like a volunteer work, obviously, but in large organizations and in the multinationals and even down to the smallest mom and pop shops, no one's doing it for free, right? They're all we're working for a living, we're working to support our families, and you're right. If payroll goes down, I would venture to say the company is no longer there. No one's going to come to work. No one's going to show up if they know, hey guys, sorry, we're not going to get paid anymore, right? That company ceases to exist now. So to your point, it is one of, if not the most important pieces of the organization. And quite frankly, it's in almost all cases the highest dollar amount of cost to the company, right? So it's the largest cost in an organization. So not only is it existentially important it is from an employee perspective, but also from a business perspective, right? So it's we are privileged to be in this space. We have the honor of supporting all these families, but we also, and I love to use this word, like we are the gatekeepers, right? And in these organizations, we are the gatekeepers of the most important, financial asset of the company is our money. So we're privileged, we're honored, we're gatekeepers. It's great. I love this space so much. I'm so passionate about it. We could talk for hours and hours about global payroll.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and it is really exciting and really fascinating once you scratch beneath the surface to talk about payroll, because I think a lot of people when they, who are maybe just they hear about payroll, but they don't really think about it every day because they do something else, right? In passing, when you think about payroll, you're like, oh yeah, well, it's,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, yeah, we have to make sure it gets done, but I mean, oh,
Yeah.
boring,
It happens.
maybe
It's
you
behind the
know.
scenes, right? And that's another thing. Like a lot of times when we talk to our teams or when we talk to everyone, and when we talk about actually what is global payroll, right? It's historically, and I hate to say it, but historically it has been seen as just this back office function that no one really cares about, no one really thinks about until something goes wrong, right? We're not getting the applause every Friday or every other Friday or every month. Hey, thank you so much. It's an expectation that it's done and it's done correctly. So it's always sort of been forgotten about until there's an issue. And I think that's where we're seeing the shift now. And that's what global payroll is truly morphing into, or truly transcending into, away from that back office, just cost center back office function, into a strategic partner of the business or strategic driver of the business, which I think has been the shift that we've seen in the industry. And it's been something I've loved being at the forefront of, and watching grow over the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah, and you're right. It has been over the last 10 to 15 years that shift has been slowly, but ever so surely, inexorably taking place, right? Payroll can be kind of like your electricity, right? Nobody wakes up in the morning, turns the light on in the bathroom, and then calls up the power company, says, "Hey, thanks for getting my electricity right this morning."
Exactly.
You know, but
Yeah.
when electricity goes out, oh man, I mean, there's
Now the
everybody's,
phone calls. Yeah, now the
yeah.
phone calls start. Now everyone wants to talk to the electric company, right? Yeah.
That's right. That's right. And so it's nice to see payroll sort of shifting out of this electric company metaphor into analogy, excuse me, into something into what it should always have been. Now we're going to talk today a little bit about this. Has actually been a nice sort of setup for this. Is the evolving definition of global payroll, and how it kind of, it kind of shares, mirrors your own career transformation. We were talking about how you found yourself in payroll in this whole thing, and you touched on that a little bit a few minutes ago. Um, but we have a few things we want to talk about today, and maybe you could first dive into a little bit more about, how did you find yourself in payroll? Because, you know, let me just set the stage here, a little bit more. Um, there's no payroll degree, right? I mean, they're working on it. That's
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
really exciting. I've been talking with folks on this podcast around that, and I think it's so overdue, and it's really exciting. We hear about the chief payroll officer, sort of the
Mhm.
rise of the chief payroll officer. I think that's a really good thing for the profession as well. But there is no defined path. You graduate from high school, you go to college. You go to college for, business administration, maybe and you choose finance or accounting or something like that, but there's no payroll option. And
Yeah.
so what's your background and how did you find yourself in payroll?
Yeah, so I actually, it's funny enough, I started when I was in college in computer engineering, and then I started leaning towards the business degree. I finished my degree in business, and when I started my career, I was actually in engineering and on the IT side of the world, right? So I'm an engineer by trade. I'm doing a lot of global acquisition work, and I started to sort of find my niche inside of the finance community, right? Whether it be ERP implementations or some of the payment system implementations. And I was on that side of the world, which it's you're very focused on the technology aspect, but you have sort of that background, and I don't want to even pretend that I understood everything about the financial community, but I was in that space, right? And got the call that, hey, we want to really look at global payroll. And at the time, I had no idea what global payroll is. I had never processed payroll. I didn't. It was the first time I had heard the word, and we're talking back in the early mid 2000s, and we get to the point where it's like, hey, we want to go on this journey. We're looking for someone to implement a system, right? We need someone to implement this system. We're going to pick a vendor. We're going to put this tool out, and it's going to solve all of our payroll problems globally. It's going to consolidate, 60 plus countries and tens of thousands of employees onto one platform. And in my head, in my engineer head and in my IT world, I'm like, oh my God, that's an incredible challenge. That sounds awesome. Let's do this. And then I get sucked into this global payroll world when I have that thinking of I'm going to implement a system or a tool or a vendor. And that was day one. That's how I fell into it. And again, over the last decade or so or more, it has just morphed into where we are now, right? With global payroll, what it truly means and what it truly is. And I've moved out of obviously that technical IT engineering space and more into the business side of the world and leading an organization and leading global payroll and workforce management. And it's been one of my what I will say most treasured opportunities in my career. It has been an incredible journey, and I love talking with people like yourself and other leaders in the space about all of our different backgrounds and it's such a diverse culture. And I go back to the people always. It's always about the people. There's such a diverse culture of people in this space, and I love having these conversations to see where everyone went. But for me, it started on that technology space with this big idea and morphed into where we are today. So it's been fun.
Yeah, that's really interesting how you sort of you got thrown right into the fire right
Hmm.
away. Hey, let's set up this global payroll scenario here, and
Hmm.
it and I love your attitude, right? Because a lot of people might have got pretty scared, maybe but you're like, yeah, let's do this, and and
Yeah.
and it is, man, it's such a heavy lift getting a
Yes.
global payroll I don't even wanna say system, although that's part of it, g a global payroll calculus. I mean,
Yeah. Yeah.
what is it?
Mindset, right?
In mindset, everything, right? There's so much that
Yeah.
goes into it, sort of a holistic thing. Um, how has global okay, how is it different? How was it different then, about a decade ago or so,
Yeah.
versus today? What does global payroll truly mean today?
Sure.
Yeah.
So I think, and I think it means something a little bit different to everybody and to every organization. I truly don't believe there is one true answer that is is for everybody, right? And I'll say that because I think again, a decade ago, or when a lot of large multinationals, early adopters in the space were thinking global payroll, I think that mindset or that strategy, I should say, from a top down strategy was, hey, we see we have 60 disparate systems, vendors, all these contracts, all these different technology solutions. And I think the mindset was based around let's consolidate, right? Like let's get one vendor, let's get one system globally that we can run our payroll organization with payroll, workforce management together on this one platform. I think that was just the initial push is just like, hey, consolidate down to one and get there. And I think as we entered into that strategy and as you start to implement that strategy, you learn very quickly that that just is not one, it's not true. There is no one single source, one vendor, one system, one tool that works or that is appropriate globally or works in that way globally, right? You have aggregator models, you have ICPs, you have all these different models of global payroll. There isn't that one true that goes global, right? For every person in the world in every country. So I think it started with that mentality of more system focused, more consolidation focused. And now we've seen the shift into not necessarily picking a vendor, not necessarily picking a tool or a system, but more of a data driven, data analytical mindset of what can we do to bring the most value to our organization obviously paying compliantly, paying on time, right? All of those things that are at the core of what payroll is, but using it as a strategic arm of the organization. And I think that way of thinking, and rather than saying, hey, we just want to put a tool in to consolidate, to now we want to build an organization that can bring value and also have the tool, that's the shift, right?
It's really interesting. I've heard it described as Global 1.0, Global 2.0, and I've heard rumblings of global payroll, excuse me, Global Payroll 3.0.
Yeah.
And we don't have to get into the 3.0. It's almost like, the fourth dimension. But in any event, that Global Payroll 1.0 is people just figuring out how do we bring order
Yeah.
to this global payroll, just this sprawling chaos, because it really is chaos. You're dealing with all these local payroll providers in every single LPPs for short, in every single region or most regions. You have maybe your main payroll system you already have, and you're trying to cobble it all together. I think I've still to this day we see vendors, and they're not a minority. There are
Mhm.
many vendors that are working toward, providing, hey, we're going to have a single global payroll engine or a
Yeah.
system, like a software for all of your global payroll needs. And there's so many moving parts there. I wonder whether that's ever really going to happen 100%, when it comes to the full scope of global payroll. There are some things, common denominators to every region, that you might be able to all bring under the aegis of one system, which is great. But you talk about that global 2.0, where okay, we've brought order to this process. However we did it, right?
Hmm.
I'm
Hmm.
using the royal we here. Organization A, B, C, or D, each got to its global payroll ecosystem in whatever way it did, that brought order to the system, brought order to their global payroll. Now they're able to focus on that strategic stuff because they have that immediacy or near immediacy of data. It's real time, it's accurate, or it's close to real time. It can be provided within a day as opposed to 20 days, this kind of stuff, right? Where maybe some sort of request from leadership doesn't take, weeks for them to produce to respond to. It can take maybe a day or two, as opposed, and that's way better, right? Or even
Correct.
even the same day. And so getting to that level, um, eh, how do payroll leaders design their organizations to deliver the strategic value
And
beyond compliance and on-time pay, right?
yeah, and
Like
everything you
beyond
said
that.
is so spot on. And I think like that core, it's funny because I don't want to say that like global payroll in its infancy and when global payroll was starting to really like take off was the wrong thing to do, because I did think it set that base foundation from a technology standpoint. You still, to your point, have to bring order to the chaos that a lot of the largest multinationals were under. Disparate systems all over the world, not talking to each other, not consolidated. The reporting functionality was so difficult to really analyze and understand the data from a WFM or payroll perspective, for that matter. So that it was still so critically important from a Global Payroll 1.0 to start that journey and build your foundation, right? So now you have the technology foundation to support, hopefully, what you want to do long term and where you go with the value creation with your payroll strategy or your WFM strategy globally. And I think so that's still so critically important to have right. Get get your technology solution under control, understand, bring order to that chaos, as you said. And then from there, I think when it comes to building the organization to support what your strategy is, I think first you have to outline what your strategy, like, why are you doing this? Why are you going on this global payroll journey as an organization? Is it from a lens of strictly compliance, reporting on time pay? Are you truly ready to utilize global payroll as a strategic arm of the business to support business growth, to support acquisition and merger, and to do all of these things that help businesses go to the next level? Or are you doing it still at that global payroll 1.0 to put order to the chaos. I think that's important to understand as an organization. What is your strategy? Why are we doing this? Then from there, build your organization. So if I look at it from, hey, we're at that next step, we're going to do this as a value creation, as a strategic arm of the organization. We're bringing the global payroll leadership team to the table to help us drive business decisions. I think you have to, again, this goes back to my first point, look at the people. Who are the people that we have here? What does our organization look like? What are our strengths? Where are our gaps, et cetera? And then build your organization out from there. I used the term earlier in our chat, the diversity of the culture of people that we have. I look at just my own organization. I have people with engineering degrees. I have people with accounting degrees. I have CPPs. I have people that have been in the payroll world processing large volume payrolls for 30 years. And I have people that have never processed payroll that are data scientists, right? So we have this incredibly diverse group of individuals with skills across the board, and then now focusing on how to leverage those skills to create value for the organization. So we've sort of, now we're using the technology that we have to your point, move away from 20-day processing into 1 day. And we've shortened that window to give ourselves time, to give our data scientists time, our data analytics team time, our COEs time to analyze the data that we have and use it to help drive business decisions. But we need to structure it and bring the right talent, bring the right people, bring the right experience and knowledge in to be able to do that.
One of the things that you brought up that's super interesting here is that I got from this is by merely bringing order to your global payroll scenario, you are being strategic. Right, because now you're able to absorb acquisitions very smoothly with, with
Mhm.
intentionality, with a good, sort of a good workflow where it's very seamless for those newly acquired workforces to be brought into the fold, at least from a payroll standpoint and all this kind of stuff. And
Yep.
so just merely being under control, that is a big step in the right direction. And then, of course, then because you're under control and you have that access to all that information, that organizational leadership eventually sort of catches wind of this and starts to come to you for valuable information about the workforce, which is so critical and essential to a lot of organizational decision making on what to do next and these
And
sorts of
it's
things.
and it's cool to think about it because prior to having this order and prior to having this organization, right? If you think about it, how would the leadership team, a central leadership team that's managing a global organization, right? If you want your data on country X, where you have a manufacturing and maybe a retail population, and you want to see the workforce insights and the analytics behind that, how do you get that before you have this model in place? You're probably going to some LPP, to your point, to try to pull some reports that maybe you have a totally disparate system that doesn't even talk to your payroll system with your actual, maybe your hours and time reporting or your OT reporting. So you're trying to compile different reports from different vendors, from different systems. Do you have people that can actually do that? And I don't think it was even necessarily a thought before. And now it's so easy. The data is right there at our fingertips, and we have the people on the ground in our organization that you get the request, hey, we want to see where our spend is at, or we want to see where the hours are being concentrated in this country. Is it within, which division, which function? Where do we need to focus our next potential acquisition on? Where do we need to focus on, headcount and giving more support to the business to grow a particular segment or to a particular business driver that we have, and we need headcount to support it? We have that data within Global Payroll. We can show you how much we're spending on hours, how many hours our current team is investing in a particular segment, in a particular business unit, et cetera. And we can do that globally now for the entire organization. You don't have to go to some finance manager here or HR manager here or HRBP here. It's all within that global payroll and workforce management organization, which, again, to your point, you just brought order to the chaos, right?
Mm. Yeah, 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 exactly. Let's get back to the career paths
Yeah.
in payroll here, as I know we want to talk about this too. What what steps can uh, professionals in this field, leaders in this field, companies take, excuse me, to develop career paths and growth opportunities for payroll professionals in a just in general, but also in a global context?
Yeah, and I think, part of it is going back to like how we're designing the organization and what we're doing this for. So once we identify, hey, why are we doing this? What does the org look like? Now and we've actually recently gone through, and I've been through this a few times now, where we're actually looking at the roles themselves. What are we titling these roles? What experience are we actually looking for? And understanding what the market is to actually fill these roles, and having sort of that epiphany where it's like you're not looking necessarily, depending on your strategy, but you're not looking for just someone that's sitting behind, and I love you, like, we're not processing in a mainframe anymore, right? We're not in an Excel, we're not doing that anymore. So that it's great to have those skills, and they're invaluably important to understand, but we're looking now for more data analytics, AI, and I know that's the buzzword everyone's loving to use, but it's quite frankly, it is incredibly important in this space. Data scientists and people that actually are understanding the business and the drivers of the business more so than just. Um, I always didn't like when people would say, "Where it's just data input." You're just inputting data into a system and it's spitting out results. That is never been the case, first of all, but it drives me crazy when we talk about that or when we hear that. But you're not looking for that anymore. It's not data input. It's not mainframe processing. We're really going into more of that analytical side. So structuring your roles that attract the talent to take that specific function, right? So imagine we're going out and we're putting out in the job boards of the worlds of the LinkedIn's, and you put, we're looking for a high volume processor, right? And being maybe a college graduate who's has an engineering degree or has a finance degree or a CPA, you're probably never going to look at that particular job posting. You're never going to apply for that job. You're not going to go into, I don't want to process a high volume, or I'm not doing data input. That was the mindset originally. Now we start putting into those job postings and job boards that we're looking for data analytics. We're looking for someone that can utilize AI, that can help drive strategic business decisions. That's at the forefront now of all of our prerequisites and what we're looking for in experience, and bringing the right people into the team to help us grow, right? So I think it's understanding the strategy, getting your job titles and your organization aligned to the different skills that you want to have, and structuring it in a way that makes sense, and then going out and finding that right talent, and doing that by accurately describing what this position truly is and what value it's bringing and how we're going to utilize you within the organization.
You know what's interesting is you made me think of so many things. So first of all, you've also kind of described here the difference between, so if say you're a payroll professional, you kind of want to move from maybe doing payroll at a smaller organization or a smaller
Mhm.
medium-sized organization. You want to move into the enterprise space. It's an entirely different set of skills because
Very true.
obviously some enterprise companies, their payroll is in disarray, but on the balance, most of them, just by sheer need, necessity, they have it under control at certain levels.
Yeah.
So there's much less of that sort of conventionally understood payroll role that's needed. Right, and so you need to be the data scientist. You need to understand how the business works and all this kind of stuff, and be able to pull out this information and put it into context and all that. I'm so glad you brought up AI. We can't get through a payroll related podcast today without talking about it. We won't get into the granularities of what AI can
Yeah.
do necessarily for payroll, but I am glad you brought it up because it also made you think of just in general. We hear about all of the jobs that AI is going to be able to do, can already do now, AI
Mhm.
agents, or will be able to do soon, right? And from that standpoint as well, you think about, okay, how are people going to, actual people, human beings, what is their role going to be in
Mhm.
business, right? Well, what will the new entry level roles be? Will there be entry level roles? And I think, we need to sort of rethink. It's not about coming up with new entry level roles for any given um, domain of interest, like whether it be payroll or accounting or, or marketing or whatever. It's more about thinking about it holistically, maybe thinking, okay, there's going to be just uh, this is a tough concept, but I want to kind of just impart it somehow is that there needs to be a rethinking of, okay, what does it mean to enter the organization from the ground floor up? The ground
Mhm.
floor will be a different thing. It
Yeah.
won't be necessarily 3 stories up. It'll
Yep.
just be a different ground floor. You'll be going into an organization. The new way to get into an organization at the entry level will be to learn data science, maybe. Do you see where I'm going with that? I mean, it's just you
No,
made me
you're
think.
you're absolutely correct, and that's exactly where I see it heading because, like I said, and you made a great point that I didn't touch on the differentiation where we're talking like those enterprise organizations, right? Who kind of have this under control out of necessity, and are already on that next level, but there's still absolutely we have folks all across the world and there are folks out there in some of the smaller and just the mom and pop shops who truly you have a couple folks on payroll and you're processing payroll. It doesn't diminish the fact that you can still bring value to that organization just because it's small, just because we're still processing maybe in some of the old traditional norms, that doesn't mean you're not valuable and that you can't provide other insights within that. And I still think those skills, even outside of the enterprise level, are starting to shift and coming in at the ground floor means something very different to your point today than it has historically, even with outside of enterprise, even with some of the smaller organizations or your local family owned business, for example, it could very well mean you're coming in as a data scientist or a CPA or having a business degree, a general business degree, and that's how you're coming in the door. And I love to say this, like global payroll and the profession in general touches it might be one of the very few pieces of an organization that touch every single person, that touch everything, right? It's a compliance, it's data. We have all the data for all the employees at our fingertips, right? It touches every single piece of the organization in some way, shape, or form. And that's why I think it's so unique as a career, right? And why you that ground floor is able to be so different now, right? It's not just, again, hey, I need someone that understands payroll processing or tax or or just payroll compliance and you have to have a CPP. That's no longer the case, right? You can come in with from so many different avenues, and just getting your foot into the door doesn't necessarily predicate the need for payroll processing experience, right?
And it's really interesting because you've just described some ways to make an educational track in
Mhm.
payroll, especially attractive, right?
And
If
that's the key, right? Making it attractive. Like I think there's still this, and I'm trying, like, what can we do to make it more attractive, right? Because I think there might be still this mindset when we go back to the top of the call and top of our discussion was like, who signed up and said, hey, I'm going to go to school to be a payroll professional, right?
yeah.
Nobody's doing that. So how do we make it more attractive so that people understand what we are actually doing, what value we actually bring, and where the shift for organizations is going? How do we communicate that? How do we get that out there? I think that's part of our jobs as leaders within this field, and as yourself as a visionary within the field, of like, how do we propagate that message throughout the globe of this is fun, this is exciting, we are at the forefront of something that's truly transforming organizations, the way they think, the way they operate, the way they grow. We need to get that out there to bring the right talent into, because the more talent we bring in, the bigger this can get, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, absolutely. You really put it well. I think this is a great point to sort of conclude the podcast. I mean, you really brought up a great point. And being that connective tissue in the
Mhm.
organization, that payroll, the sort of the quarterback in many ways.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Dave, thank you so much for being my guest on the podcast. This has been a really, really great episode.
No, appreciate it, Brent. Thanks so much for having me. I guess I've been looking forward for it for a while, and we could talk for hours and hours. I know you and I have connected a few times offline, and appreciate it. It's been great, and love watching your previous episodes, and can't wait to see where we go with it.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, yeah. This is a lot of really great information for the audience. Thank you very much. Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Workforce Management and Payroll Insights by HR.com. We hope today's episode brought you valuable insights and fresh perspectives on the future of payroll and workforce management. Be sure to check out more episodes and explore resources at HR.com/podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, keep innovating and making a difference in the world of payroll and workforce management.